Okay, colleagues, it is 4 o'clock. If everyone is logged in, I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'll be looking for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, consents, would anyone like anything pulled? Okay, so we will put up a motion for 3 and 4, and we'll drop 2 to underneath the items to be heard. Mr. Meehan, it may be about 5 p.m. before we get to item 2 if you're waiting on that one. Councillor Helmer.
So obviously I'm not a member of the committee, but I'm interested in getting some advice from legal about item number 4. So I just raised that for my colleagues. If it doesn't come up here, I guess I can raise it at council.
Okay, item number 4, we won't, if we can back out of the motion, we will save that and we'll drop that to the end of the agenda because I understand Ms. Smout should be available around that time. So we're just looking for a motion on item 3. Councillor Armstrong. Sorry, yes, I've pulled item 2 and 4 and we're dropping those to the bottom of the agenda. At this time, I'm only looking for a motion on item 3. Anything that there's discussion or to be pulled, I need to drop to the bottom of the agenda to keep on schedule today. So Councillor Armstrong, did you have a comment?
Question, yeah.
Okay, on item 3?
Well, no, just a question on 2, 3, and 4 in process. I guess the thing is, we're waiting, no member of the committee wanted it pulled for legal opinion. Someone from outside the committee wants it pulled for legal opinion, and that's fine. But if the legal advice, I just want to throw this out there, if the legal advice is something that later on all council should hear, maybe that maybe that should happen when this goes to council rather than now, because they'll have to give the same advice again at council. If you're sort of, that's 1 and 2. If legal is available, if she's not here, then what?
I can answer your question.
So, I'm just kind of thinking out how this should work. So I leave that with the chair at your discretion as to how you want to handle things.
Thank you. So if you can remove your moving of this item and we'll put the correct item up, which is just item number 3. It would be my intent if there's a legal question that we start it now and the advice may be a report back at council, but this way at least legal can be asked the question by the committee. So I'd be prepared to move that at the appropriate time. I am trying to stay on a very tight schedule, which is why I'm dropping any of the consent items that you have questions about to the end of the agenda. So item number 3 is on the screen right now, moved and seconded. I don't understand there were any comments about it, so we're going to open that vote.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. So we do have the staff report on item 5, A and B. We've been asked to proceed with item B first, as we have a couple of guests here for that item. And the clerk is advising me it's scheduled to 4:10, and I was too efficient. So perhaps we can do item 2 now. That was pulled by Councillor Usher. Item number 2 first, because we have to wait 6 minutes, so perhaps it's the right time to ask your question for item 2.
Yeah. Mine is relatively simple because it's a straightforward letter, at least I think it is. I just need a little bit of explanation as to how did we get this money? We have this accumulation of money. It's an endowment from one person, it seems. Both the endowment, both of them are endowment, and we are asking to release them or put them in. Can you give me a little overview of that from?
So I
Museum
suspect what
London.
you would like, Councillor Usher, is to direct this to our staff to report back, which if we have a letter, we can receive it just for information. However, to take any action, we would need a report back from our staff. I'd be happy to allow Mr. Meehan to answer your question about the origins of the endowment, but if we want to take action on this, we might want to ask our staff to report back on it, and I understand our staff is prepared to do that if the request comes
Well,
forward.
what are we doing here, Madam Chair? Are we receiving this, or are we approving it, or are we referring it to staff, or what? Because it doesn't say, it's just a request here.
Correct. So the motion that I'd be looking to put forward would be a referral to staff to report back on this, because right now it is just a letter, so all we're doing is receiving it.
I'd like to make that motion then.
Okay, would you like any context from Mr. Meehan, or would you like that when the report comes back?
Well, I think when it comes back from staff.
Perfect,
Yeah.
so we'll get that motion up on the screen.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 5-0.
So for anyone that couldn't read the screen, that letter was directed to our civic administration, and they were directed to report back at a future meeting on the request within the letter. So you would be informed of the time when that meeting is, and you could attend at that point, and if you wish to seek delegation status, you could do that then as well. Okay? So Ms. Smout is down here, Counselor. I'm not sure if you've been able to forward your question to her, if you'd like a motion to go in closed session to ask a question. I'm not sure if it's an open session question. Perhaps you could help me with this.
Thank you. It's definitely a closed session question.
So the clerk is advising me that the question should perhaps move down just for our timing today. I wonder if you'd like to connect with Ms. Smout so that she'd be prepared to answer the question when we move into closed session around 5:45. Just a suggestion, but I would be happy to move that we go in closed session to receive legal advice at the appropriate time on that matter. It now looks like it's just about time to tee up that video, especially if you live in Toronto, which is 2 minutes to the east of here, and therefore 2 minutes in the future. I'll give you the time to get ready. And perhaps before we start the official item, you could introduce the people who are here, and that way we haven't started before 4:10.
Thank you, I will. I'm Jill Tansley with Social Services and Housing, and it's my pleasure to introduce 2 new online tools to attract immigrants to London and Middlesex. We recognize that 2 of those important audiences when we're attracting immigrants to London are entrepreneurs and international students. So you will notice when you see these products that they're featured. The first one is Start London, which the city did with our partners LEDC and the Small Business Centre. And the second project is called On the Move, and our partner was Middlesex County. They're both funded by the Government of Ontario. And I'm pleased today we have 2 of the entrepreneurs who participated in the video Start London. We have Tariq Alansari here. Tariq is with Zomaran Merchant Services, and Zomaran is a leading electronic payments processing company in London, and they have won many awards, including recently they were on the Profit Magazine's Hot 50 list for the last 2 years. Aaron Guo is also here. Aaron is with Long-Term Technologies, and Long-Term Technologies is a Siemens channel partner and has helped develop relationships with Western University in the engineering faculty, and also with Fanshawe College with the technical services department. And I understand their students are now using the software of Aaron's company, Long-Term Technology. I'd like to introduce Robert Collins with the London Economic Development Corporation, who will show the video.
Welcome, Tariq and Aaron and Robert.
Thank you, Chair and members. Very quickly, just to let you know that we had an extensive consultation process involving the many students at Student to Business who gave us their ideas about what would really help sell London. This video now is in 6 languages: Mandarin, Korean, Arabic, South American Spanish, Brazilian Portuguese, and Canadian English. Just to share with you that we've had the opportunity to already show it to 400 plus international students as part of Fanshawe's official welcome. The Chamber of Commerce Global Business Opportunities Committee has seen it and is primed to use it. We've already shared it with visiting delegations from both Yuan City and Nanjing. So the video, we think, has lots of different life and different uses. We've been very fortunate to have the talented services of Adam Kaplan and Webisodes, who've been both flexible and very accomplished in helping us launch this product. So we're very proud of it, and we think that all of us can use our social media, use many different ways to connect with different audience to help show how London is such an attractive place to come to study or to start your business. So please roll it.
I'd like to introduce Steve Pellemer from the Small Business Center, and Steve will show you the website that goes with the video.
Thank you. So the site, well, actually, first let me say, it's been a pleasure to be part of this project. I've seen that video dozens of times, and it still inspires me every single time. So great work, Adam. The site is very straightforward, and the intention of the site was to basically keep the video alive. How do you go from that video to practical resources? So we've kept it very straightforward, okay? And really what it does is it links back into the video, it links back into London's immigration portal, and we've just focused on what we know are the critical things that newcomers into the community are looking for. There's information about some of the immigrant startup programs, and of course the regulatory environment and access to financing and capital. So those are the primary things we know that they're interested in. We didn't want to overwhelm the site. This way it just reconnects them to resources that are already available and avoids any duplication. And the positive news in this is that even though it hasn't officially really been launched yet, it's already getting some decent traction, most of it coming out of LEDC, then the university, and then from the immigration portal. And that's the other good news part of this, is that it'll be able to track what the uptake on that video is by seeing how many people click through for more information. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are you ready for any questions from the committee?
Certainly. There's one other tool to present, but if you'd like questions now, that's fine.
Okay. Committee, any questions on this? Councillor?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question is to Mr. Collins, because I love the video, by the way. I was dancing in my seat, and I was tempted to stand up and do a little bit of wiggling, but I won't do it in front of this group. They might want to get up to it. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I had to put a little bit of humor into it. But I listened to Mr. Collins, and he said that the video is in 6 different languages. And he named off a few. And Canada has 2 official languages. And everywhere I go, particularly the past week, I was at an FCM board meeting, and every single thing that we did was always interpreted exactly immediately into French. And I know that when the Canadian government accepts people to Canada as immigrants, it says to them that you can come with your culture, come with your habits, come with everything. All we ask you to do is to learn one of the 2 official languages, English and or French. And I'm disappointed that I don't hear anything here in French, because French is our official language. So can you address that?
I'm very pleased to address that. Thank you for that insightful question. We are hoping to get the funding to be able to produce a French version as well as some other versions. So I want to assure Councillor that that's very much on our priority list. But to tell you how, sort of, when we were developing which languages to choose, it was a combination of consulting with folks about where are the best sources of potential international students to be coming to this community, as well as potential entrepreneurs. So these were the priority languages which came through that process. So we've certainly recognized that we would love to have a French version, and that's high on our priority list to accomplish that.
And I accept and respect that. Well, I won't accept it as such, but I do know that my biggest fear is that we could be losing, and I know that you're going to look after that in the future, but we could be losing some great potential assistance in the future and or funding if we don't start taking into consideration both of our official languages, because that should take preference over anything else. Anything else comes next, from my perspective. And you only have to listen to the commotion that we heard over the past week with respect to the police car and the languages in the police car. You know, I'm not saying I'm for or against any of these things. I'm just saying that I'm a Canadian, and Canada has 2 official languages, and they're English and French. So, thank you very much for your explanation anyway.
Thank you, Counselor. Ms. Tansley?
If there are no more questions, I'd be happy to show the second tool. Thanks. So I had hoped that our friends from Middlesex County would be here today. Unfortunately, that was not the case. This tool is called On the Move, a guide to living in London and Middlesex County. So Middlesex County and the city were very much full partners in the creation of this, and it links to the London and Middlesex immigration portal. What it is it's a planning tool which provides the individual who may be seeking to immigrate with a personalized task list and time frame in which to complete those tasks, as well as background information that they may be looking for in the community. So information on healthcare, education, finding a job, getting a home, etc. So I would like to take you just through a few of the items on the website. There you'll see that there are 2 buttons. What is your main reason for locating to the area, to study, or to live and work? Or you can skip to the tool. So let's just try study, and we'll go through a few of the questions so you can get an idea of how it works, and then we'll skip to the tool. So I'm going to study. Am I a citizen or resident of Canada? No. Do I know about different kinds of visas? No, I certainly don't. I need information on that. Do I have a student visa? No. Do I know where I would like to study in London? No, I don't. Wide open. And what level of education do I intend to obtain in London? Say I'm going to get a college degree. So it goes on from there. They're about 10, 12 questions with yes or no answers. And then at that point, we are provided with the task list. Now in this case, because we haven't gone through the entire survey, we've got all the tasks. And you'll see they're listed here. So by, in terms of time frame. So within 6 months of arrival, here are the things that you should do. Here's your checklist, which you can add a note, remove the task, check it off if you've completed it, and so on. There are things you should do 3 months before you arrive, should be researching the cost of English classes, and then closer to the time, you should check your passport. Do you need a dentist, et cetera, et cetera. And on this side, this is the background information for, so if I'm particularly interested in education, talks about the school system in London, admission requirements, and secondary school, private education, post-secondary education, and English language classes, and you can see there are all kinds of useful links and quick tips on the side. And this links back to the London Middlesex Immigration Portal at immigration.london.ca. It's our hope that you will help us promote both items today, the Start London and On the Move, and I have sent through the clerk's office, I've circulated the social media hashtags. Thank you.
Committee, any questions or comments? Seeing none,
Sorry, I was giving you a nod, not a wave. Just some comments. This is tremendous work and really impressive work. And one of the things that we always want to do is put our best foot forward when we're talking about our community, outside of our community. And these are both tools that will allow us to do exactly that. So I want to thank all of those that were involved in pulling this together. It's impressive. I'll certainly use this when I'm traveling, and I think one of the things that we always challenge ourselves to do is to have that elevator pitch ready to go about our community when we're outside of our community, because really we're the #1 boosters for this community. We're the people that can be the cheerleaders, and these are both tools that will allow us to do that. And so you can get a 30-second elevator pitch, and then you can bring them right to the 21st century and link them into these great resources. So through the chair, to all those involved, thank you very much. It's really quite impressive.
Thank you. Councillor Helmer.
Thanks. I see that the report is really just recommending we receive the report for information. There's a line at the end there that talks about On the Move being promoted through a social media campaign and purchase of online advertising. So on an ongoing basis, I know there's different folks have different responsibility for the different tools, but what kind of resources are we putting into promoting these online tools after we've created them?
Thank you. Through the chair, we've been fortunate to have very good partnership with the LEDC, and city's communication team and LEDC's communication team have worked closely together to develop a full communication strategy and social media plan. If you'd like to hear more details, I can invite the Ashley Cunningham from LEDC to speak.
Ms. Cunningham? Anywhere there's a microphone, you're good to.
Thank you for having me today, and thank you for the question. I'm happy to circulate the communications plan if you were looking for the nitty-gritty detail. We have some pretty ambitious goals, Oh, sorry. We have some pretty ambitious goals, particularly around the YouTube video. We are also continuing to work with Adam Kaplan to maximize our YouTube hits. Did you have a specific question around some of the other things we were doing?
Can you push the mic button? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So just to clarify through the chair, I'm trying to get a sense of over what time period are you planning to fund the promotion? I don't need to get all the details of the communication plan, but you get a sense of how much money you're thinking about putting into promoting it and over what time period. And it sounds like it's all being handled within LEDC's existing budget, which is good news for me to hear, but just to get a sense of the magnitude of the resources that you're going to put behind it.
Thank you. Yes, my portion is all being handled within our existing budget. There was allocation set aside within the project funding, as I understand, through the government that has been allocated as well.
And I think the councillor would like to know the promotion campaign, the length of time that we're hoping to be promoting this.
I think our goals were, what? The first goal was 1 month to see, because we're piloting some different strategies to see how they work.
Any other questions or comments? So I'd like to reiterate the comments of the mayor. He beat me to the punch. He does that sometimes. To say thank you for all of the work that was put into that, these videos and the project. Thank you for those that came today, and for all of those who are, coming to London, starting their businesses in London. There's a lot of amazing things that are happening, and I'm glad to have the support of the LEDC and the other community organizations working with the city, bringing these projects forward to us. I learned a lot. I learned about 4 new projects I didn't know about. So, thank you for coming today, and the video was great. So our motion is to endorse the project, I believe. Sorry, I'm waiting for the clerk to put it up. So the motion that's on the screen is to receive and endorse, and the vote is open.
It's just to be accepted. Excuse me, I think the resolution pertains to accept the report on the online tools to attract immigrants to London and Middlesex.
So I believe that should be correct up on screen. It's been moved and seconded, so we'll open the vote on that.
I need to ask a question.
Okay, go ahead.
I thought we were going to see a presentation on the immigration portal, the strategic plan. I thought that what we just saw was just the B part. What about the A part of this, which is the London Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership Strategic Plan? We're not going to see a presentation on that?
Sorry, you are correct. We're dropping that one after the 4:30 timed item. So that was just the B section. We still have an A section. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't want to confuse it.
The correct motion is up, moved and seconded. We can now open the vote.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. So that resolves 5B. We still have 5A, but I will be moving that until after item 6. Colleagues, you know I'm not a fan of shifting around the agenda. However, every meeting, about a week before the meeting, I start getting these requests. So I'm accommodating this one because it's a timed item, but we will jump back to 5A as soon as we're done the 4:30 item. So with that in mind, the 4:30 item number 6, is a delegation regarding the 8th report of the London Diversity and Race Relations Committee. And I'd like to invite the committee members to the microphone. I believe they also have a presentation.
We have a presentation. Yeah, it's right here.
And do you need the desk adjusted?
I think we're okay. So thank you, Madam Chair, and the rest of the committee members for having us here to present about LDRAC's suggested name change. I'm Shauna Lukowitz. I'm the chair of the London Diversity and Race Relations Advisory Committee. I'd like to introduce the other members who are here with me today. Suzanne Morrison, who is the current Education Subcommittee Chair. Kash Hussain, who sits on both LDRAC and the Accessibility Advisory Committee, and Chad Callender is with us somewhere, maybe perhaps on his way down, the past chair of LJAC. And I'd like to introduce Anne Marie Sanchez, who is the vice chair, who will begin our presentation.
Thank you, Shauna. I will actually start with Chad if he's, just to give us a little bit of background, because this conversation actually started with the last appointed advisory committee that was appointed by the last council.
Sure. So you may or may not remember, but it started actually with the previous council. We came a couple of years ago, originally with a different name change that we're going to propose today. And council asked us to go back and do a little bit more reflection as well as some consultation. I believe that we've done that thoroughly, as well as had many discussions individually as a group. And we've certainly come a long way, and I'm not going to stand in the way of these guys sharing their wonderful findings.
Thank you. So as Chad had mentioned, the conversation started in fall 2014, and the original proposed name was the Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, but the Community and Protection Services Committee requested for a further public feedback on the name change. And so we started with a public participation meeting in October 2015, and then we dug a little deeper and went with an online survey in the summer of 2016. And before we get into some of the findings from the public feedback, I wanted to just bring up our mandate, because a lot of our conversation was framed around our mandate and whether our current name and the potential of a new name should does it properly reflect our current mandate, which is to provide leadership on matters related to diversity, inclusivity, equity, and the elimination of discrimination in the City of London. So back to the feedback process. We had a public participation meeting in October 2015. We had a rich conversation, but unfortunately there wasn't much of a turnout. We wonder if it was just because it was in the middle of the week and it's hard to carve out that time for people to discuss something such as a name change. So we weren't comfortable enough to come back to the committee with the feedback we received. We thought it would be better to dig a little bit deeper, so we decided to conduct an online survey. This way it was a lot more accessible, there was a wider reach. It was promoted through the City of London social media and its newsletter, as well as through the library system. So each branch had a poster promoting the survey. And as a result of this outreach, we received 171 respondents. And I just wanted to provide some of the key insights from that survey, which is people were mainly open to updating the name. I think that was a pretty key finding on a scale of 1 to 4. So 4 being they were very open to changing the name, or they wanted a name change. We got a rating of 3.14 out of 4. And then a lot of the feedback that we received was in the open-ended comments. So much of the feedback was around oppression hierarchy. Some people were concerned that having race relations in the name, but not other types of work that the committee did, such as work against sexism or homophobia or Islamophobia, gave the optics or the illusion of an oppression hierarchy with our name. However, that being said, there was a lot of feedback around the importance of race and anti-racism and how this issue has not been resolved within the City of London. And if we removed race relations and just had diversity and inclusion, it would maybe give the illusion that we were saying that this issue is no longer an issue. And then the last key feedback was that inclusion was important. Certain groups, in particular invisible minorities, thought that they may not be reflected in the word diversity, but they would see themselves or identify themselves more in the term inclusion. So with that feedback in mind, we presented the feedback to the committee at large, but then we decided to carve out a new name at the Planning and Policy and Planning Subcommittee, And we came up with the name, the Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Oppression Advisory Committee. This is our proposed name right now. It reflects the key feedback we had. And fortunately, it was passed unanimously at the subcommittee level of the Policy and Planning Subcommittee, and as well as our advisory committee at large. And it's worth noting that our advisory committee has 22 representatives, and including many resource members that reflect different groups within our community. And now I'm just going to pass the mic to Shauna, who will discuss a little bit further the different terms of the name.
Okay, so why this name? So as Anne-Marie pointed out, we landed on it based on some of the feedback that we received. We also used a set of evaluation criteria to evaluate every name that we considered. That included whether the name was accessible, whether it was representative of London, was the name simple, was it relevant, and did it reflect best practices in terms of current terminology. The name Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Oppression Advisory Committee had a very high rating on the evaluation criteria, the highest of any of the names that we considered. As Anne-Marie already discussed, there were difficult discussions around our own committee around this. When this current version of the committee came together 2 years ago, we were not on the same page in terms of agreeing how this potential name change should go. We had very difficult conversations, and each of us, I think, did the work both individually and together to really explore what was important as we move forward, always going back to our mandate and what we were trying to accomplish. So in terms of breaking down the name, diversity reflects the makeup of our community. It reflects the broad depth and breadth of people who live in our community. Inclusion represents what we all want, which is the inclusion of everybody. And anti-oppression reflects how we get there. Diversity and inclusion can only be attained if we dismantle and acknowledge that we are against certain things. We are against oppression, sexism, racism, homophobia, Islamophobia, ableism, etc. And so anti-oppression is the pathway to authentic diversity and inclusion, and it's the work that LDRAC does. So why remove race relations? Racism continues to be a top priority in London. It continues to be a top priority in the work that we do at LDRAC, and I know that the city has committed to that as well. As you all are aware, we planned a racism forum this past Saturday that had over 150 participants and was about a 6.5, 7-hour workshop. During that time, difficult conversations were had, and we think that, it was a good beginning point for where we can all move forward with. There's more work to be done, trust to be built, and actions that need to be taken, and that is the anti-oppression work. Some may see it as negative, and we understand that. We see it as calling out what needs to change and not shying away from what is difficult and hard. So lastly, as Anne-Marie mentioned, LDRAC is made up of very diverse representation. You can see the summary of some of the organizations that are represented on LDRAC up on the last slide. There's a lot of diversity at that table. I mentioned, that addresses racism, sexism, Islamophobia, ableism, transphobia, homophobia, and more. The committee did unanimously support this recommendation, and 2 years was a long time to commit to this process, but there was a lot of steps, and it was getting feedback and then wanting to get more feedback. And it may just be a name change, but we also know that to the broader community, it reflects our mandate. And so we wanted to put in the proper time to do that. And, at this point, I think, as we've heard from council members, as well as our own LDRAC members, we're ready to move forward with the rest of the work that our committee does. Thank you.
Thank you to the committee for all of the work that you've done and for being here today and presenting. I have started a speakers list. I have Mayor Brown and then Councillor Usher.
Thanks, Chair, for getting me in first. I'll have to leave shortly after I make my remarks. It is Meet the Teacher Night, and that's not to be missed. So I'll be leaving the meeting and not returning. But what I want to say is sometimes things are worth the wait. And I think that you've really found a name that fits perfectly to your mandate and to our greater mandate. One of my takeaways this past weekend, participating in the sessions over at the South London Resource Centre, Neighbourhood Resource Centre, was the importance of plain language and the importance of addressing things head-on. When I look at the previous name and compare it to this new proposed name, I see plain language. I see a really clear connection between what we're all against and anti-oppression. And I wondered what that name might look like, because anti-racism is a huge part of that. But you've managed to find a way to say this that encompasses so much more as well. And so I won't have an opportunity to support it here at committee because I have to go, but I would like to thank you for taking the extensive amount of time to get to what I think is the right answer, to what I think is the best answer, and I look forward to supporting your work at council. Thank you.
Councillor Usher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I'm really sorry that the mayor is not going to state what I have to say, because first of all, I want to thank you very, very much for all the work you put into this. I know more than anyone else that I was here at the last council when we came up with the original name 2 years ago, and despite the fact that I was against it, I have to tell you that I do respect the work you do. I'm quite familiar with your committee. I've been there. And I know what the mandate is, I know what the previous mandate is, and I know exactly what this is now. And these things are never very easy to do. But I am not in favor of this. I do not like the word oppression, and I do not like the word anti-oppression. I don't think that people who are classified as being racist against would consider themselves as being oppressed, just because people are prejudiced against them from a racist perspective or from an ethnic perspective or a language perspective does not mean that they're oppressed. So I don't like the word oppressed at all. And I'm surprised that anybody out of the visible minority community or the people who would be stigmatized as racial would consider themselves being oppressed. I can't see that, unless I'm seeing a different meaning for the word oppressed than you are. Having said that, I think that if we want to change the word race relations, that's okay if you come up with an appropriate word. I'm just saying that anti-oppression, from my perspective, is not an appropriate word. And I could only speak for myself. I have never spoken to my colleagues about this in any way whatsoever. Nor do I speak to the public about it. I've been to your public participation meeting, and I made a presentation at that time. I'm not so sure that I was heard, but I still made a presentation. Of course, the time when I went there, I wanted to give you a little history about the organization more than anything, about the committee more than anything else. I wasn't there to debate anything. There are many organizations now in our country and in our community, not the community, but province, that still carry the word race relations. I think there was a guy at the forum on Saturday who came from Toronto, who is the vice chair of one of such organizations. And whether we are official members of those organizations or not, we're still part of them, right from the United Nations down to and you know what I'm talking about, CMARD, which is the United Nations Organizations Against Racism. And also the Canadian Race Relations Organizations and the Ontario Race Relations Organizations. They're still there with the word race relations. I understand that part of it is that some people feel that the word race relations is outdated. And maybe it's because you talk about all of these different phobias and so on that should be.
Sorry, I'm going to just pause you. If you don't have questions for the committee, that's fine, but then please direct your comments to myself or your colleagues. I don't think we're here to debate with the committee. They just
Madam
presented
Chair,
their
everything
findings.
that I say is through the chair. Don't
Okay.
embarrass me, please.
And to the committee and not to the presenters, right?
Well, they're the ones who made the presentation.
Okay. So discussion, debate will be amongst us and not with the advisory committee. So I encourage your comments. I am interested to hear them, but I don't feel it's appropriate to direct them at the advisory committee.
So I'm not supposed to look at them? Is this what you're telling me? Because I look around, But they're the ones who are looking, they're the only ones who are giving me their attention, and you, at least Bill. So I'm just addressing a subject to the audience who is here. It's a small audience. When I sit over there, I look exactly across here. But if you don't want me to speak, tell me that, because I do want to address the subject.
Counselor, I'm very interested to hear your opinion. When we say through the chair, the rationale that I understand for that is that your comments are actually to the chair who's, coordinating the meeting. I know in practice, we say through the chair and speak directly to staff, but you're actually in reality supposed to be speaking to the chair who may refer to staff or to advisory committee members for comments. So I want to hear your comments. I'm not trying to stifle them, but I don't want volunteers who have come to present to feel that they're on trial or in the middle of a debate. So.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I'm speaking through you. And what I'm trying to say is that, and I'm addressing the subject, I'm not addressing anyone else then, because I'm really addressing the subject and I'm really addressing the name of the subject. But I can't just look at you, I've got to look around so that everybody could know that I'm making a statement. I don't want to debate this, I'm just giving an opinion, okay? So coming back to what I was saying, is that there are many, many organizations out there with the name Race Relations, and we are part of those organizations. Whether we are official members, sign-up members or not, I don't know, but most of the folks at least some of the leaders in this advisory committees, they're quite familiar with that. So the thing about this is that we have experienced over the past months and years and almost forever, racism in our community. And sometimes we try to hide the fact that there is racism. And I don't think that we should try to hide that in any way whatsoever, through you, Madam Chair. I don't think that we should pretend as though it's not there. And most of us are quite familiar with the episodes that took place, I would say even up to the past 2 years, because 2 years ago I sat right over there when somebody referred to me with the N-word. And there are people in the community who walk the streets and they were referred to, visitors to our community, who were referred to as the N-word. Those are all part of racism. And if there was not requirement for the word race relations or racial discrimination or racism or anti-racism or whatever we want to call it, then we wouldn't have to have a forum as a type we had last week, Saturday. We wouldn't have to have these conversations that we've been having in the Northeast over the past year or so. And a statement wouldn't be made in the Free Press that says the mayor vows anti-racism action. And within that, I'm not going to read the article, but within the article, it says right there that there is racism, and we need to fight racism, and we need to do everything possible to eliminate racism. We'll probably never eliminate racism. We'll probably never eliminate any kind of racial discrimination. All I'm saying is that we have to take those things into consideration and bring the wording home to match the people that we're serving. And I don't think that anti-oppression serves any of the type of people who experience any kind of discrimination. So I have a hard time accepting the word anti-oppression. I certainly do not consider myself as being oppressed. And I can't understand why we would use it. It's such a difficult word to use in this context. So I'm not going to say to you not to approve it. I'm going to leave that to you. I make my statement as to how I feel about this. And there are lots of people out in the community who will feel the same way. They're going to ask themselves, well, what is this anti-oppression and where do I fit into it? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers on this? Councillor Armstrong?
I'm doing something wrong here. Okay, I guess the thing is, I'm happy to support it, and I certainly congratulate the group. That's a long time to pick a name. So So I guess the thing is, I'm happy to support it, and I hear what Councillor Usher has said, and to a degree, I understand exactly where he's coming from on this. But having said that, you are the group and others behind you who are going to carry through. It's not maybe what is the name, but the effort that you're going to put in, you know, behind the name. I think, and I hope the whole community rallies around this new name, and certainly I hope this works out. But time will tell, and you may be back here in the future saying, hey, you know, maybe we should look at something different. But it's the effort that's going to go behind the name, not necessarily. To me, the name is not as important as what's behind the name and what, you know, all of us are going to put into the effort. I think that's really what's more important. So I'm happy to bring the motion whenever you're ready. If there's a seconder, if there's no seconder, then I guess back to the drawing board, as they say.
I am seeing some more comments. Councillor Slee.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank my colleagues, of course, for their feedback and their thoughts on this. And of course, thanks Aldrich for taking the time and doing the outreach and hearing from the public, as was earlier suggested, and see that there's been growth and learning from and moving from one name change to a new name change, which appears to be a little bit more reflective of, you know, or more, I'd say more, what's it called, more modern, I guess, would be probably the word, because it seems to change, and there's always different words that come up. You know, so I'll start off by saying I will support this, and I do recognize the concerns that one of my colleagues raised, and I do appreciate them, because I think a lot of people in the community, or some people in the community, will still feel that way in that regards. And I know that, for example, in the federal government, they still call it the Canadian Race Relations Foundation, and there's a lot of other municipalities and regions that still go with using the word race relations. But I think when I heard that there's the word anti-oppression, it really does resonate. And I think maybe, you know, it might be helpful if I give an example or read a quick definition I have of institutional oppression, which is the systematic mistreatment of people with a social identity group supported and enforced by the society and its institutions solely based on the person's membership in the social identity group. And I think if we're trying to achieve that, I think that brings us a step closer, and really recognizing, you know, I've advocated against some things that I view as systemic discrimination, and I think that this would fall within that. And I think the name anti-oppression for some, you know, could be seen as, you know, I don't think it's necessarily you're feeling yourself as oppressed, but saying there is a system that's in place, and there's things in place, and there's things that exist that are oppressing people who happen to be different than the majority. And myself as a visible minority, I know those are real realities for me, and I know that there's those barriers that are created, not necessarily that I'm feeling, you know, depressed or upset about the situation. Obviously, there's times where, you know, you reflect on that, but recognizing that the system and just the way things are, and there's work that needs to be done. So I think that really speaks to that and the anti-oppression piece. And I know, you know, that's become quite a growing conversation about anti-oppression, and many people across the province are talking about it. I know Desmond Cole, who's been one of the leading voices on carding and street checks, he's used that kind of terminology, among many other people who've been having this conversation around race. So I think it's maybe also, for some people, it's better explaining it, or, you know, trying to maybe explain it to the greater community what the anti-oppression means. Because I think right away when some people hear anti-oppression, they feel as if you're suggesting that maybe they're oppressed, and I can understand why. And recognizing, you know, the times we've been in, where we've come from, when we talk about, you know, the laws that have been in place, like it's a reality that there was clearly anti-discriminatory laws that were here in Canada, and I think there's still, you know, traces or still DNA pieces of it that still exist within our system in many ways. And I think, I'll give you one example of what I think is, oppressive in, systematic example of discrimination. It's, we still have it in place, which is the language exam or literacy test for our taxi industry here. And I think for me, when I learned about it, I found it to be very odd that this one area in our city, which we know is predominantly operated, and the members who work in that field happen to come from a diverse community, and this is just the one area where they seem to want to have a language test. So to me, that's a little bit, when you really don't need it to get from point A to point B, especially in 2016 when you can pull up a GPS, and recognizing for them to even get to that point, there's a number of other tests that they'll have to do nonetheless. So I think that, going forward, and I'm sure you guys will, I think the only pointer I'd have to say is just kind of, if we can find a better way of articulating the anti-oppression piece to members of the community. I know that there's going to be some people who are going to miss the word race relations in there, and it was a challenge for me as well. But overall, you guys have done the work. I know the makeup of the group is dedicated people. I know you guys have reached out, and I'm glad you guys made those calls. And I know even Chad, in the past, we've went to the Black Student Association Western, and we sat and he heard them loud and clear when he first pitched the initial name change at that time, and he's come from that. So I'll be supporting this, and I hope my colleagues do as well.
Okay, so there's a motion on the screen which I understand Councillor Armstrong is going to move. Councillor Helmer?
I just wanted to say, I think we've got to a good place, and I support the name change. I think it's going to be a tough one to say, the acronym. I'm sure we'll figure out how to pronounce it somehow. But, I think we need to recognize that there's there's oppression on the one side and there's privilege on the other. And we're trying to get rid of oppression throughout society. And I think this is a way of capturing all the various ways and the kind of ways that the different identities intersect and how we can advance anti-oppression work throughout London through the work of the advisory committee. So I think it's a good name. I think it's really getting, especially at the activities, what are we trying to do here? And that is to remove all these barriers and things that are causing the oppression in our city. So I understand where my colleagues are coming from, and I think that this is an appropriate way to move forward in terms of the name of the committee. I'm glad to hear that it's unanimous after such a long process.
Thank you. Councillor Usher?
Madam Chair, I'm not going to address it anymore. I just want to make a little point because Robert Collins is sitting there, and the first race, and they may not know this, but the first race relations policy for the City of London was written and Robert and I were the co-chairs way back in 1998. So I just thought I would point that out to you because I often tell you about him. Thank you.
Thank you. So are people okay if I speak from here? Okay, I am going to vote in favor of the name change. I believe, we have volunteers who do a lot of work for this council to advise us. And when it's evident to me that they've put a lot of their heart and soul and their work into something and that it's been a comprehensive process, and not something someone just, thought of and brought in off the elevator, but something that real work went into and a lot of energy went into. And I feel to be encompassing of what the community and in the best way they could engage the community of what the community wants. And I believe it's something that we should support as a council. The alternative is that we don't have advisory committees and we do our own work. So I like our advisory committees. I like the work that they do. And therefore, it only makes sense to me that we're going to be supportive of their recommendations. So we do have a motion. The report is that council consider the name change. The motion on the floor is that this committee recommend the name change to council. So that's been moved and seconded, and we're going to open the vote on that.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 3-1.
Thank you, and then we'll put the entire report on the floor, and I believe someone is already going to move that.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 4-0.
So on behalf of the Community and Protective Services Committee, thank you for all of the work that you put into this and for coming and presenting to us today. Okay, committee, we are going to circle back to 5A. I believe it's A. And is there presentation on this as well? Thank you. Ms. Dangersbear?
Thank you, Chair. I'm very excited, again, to present more information with respect to the work that we do in our community around supporting immigration. And for council members or for committee members, you'll remember that our focus on immigration also supports the local immigration partnership. Over the last number of months, we actually have moved the responsibility fully into our area in Housing and Social Services in Dearness Home. And we've created an officer, an immigration specialist in our area, and we are now trying to bring the pieces of both retention and attraction and settlement and coordination together within our service area. So we're going to have 2 additional presentations today, and I appreciate committee's indulgence of this again. 2 pieces around, one around online tools to attract immigrants to London Middlesex, and also our immigration partnership is going to present its strategic plan. I also want to acknowledge that there are people in the room here today from the London MIP, and I think they will introduce themselves or be acknowledged throughout this presentation. And I'm going to pass it on to Jill Tansley for the next piece of our presentation.
Thank you, Sandra. Actually, there's only one presentation you'll be happy to hear. It's the presentation of the strategic plan for the London and Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership. This is the 3rd strategic plan that the LMLIP, for short, or LIMLIP, has developed by and with the community. And today you'll hear from, I am the co-chair, the city co-chair for the LMLIP, and today you will hear from Dr. Dave Sanani, who is the chair from the community, representing the community, and Ms. Huda Hussein, who is the project coordinator. The London and Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership is funded by the federal government through the City of London. It was created in 2009 to strengthen the community's capacity to successfully integrate immigrants in all aspects of life in our region. And since 2009, it has grown to include over 100 agencies as well as individuals, immigrants to our community. I'd like to pass you to Huda Hussein, who will speak with you about the LIP today.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you for having us today to present on the LIMLIP.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm just asking to have the table down a little bit so I can see you.
All right.
Please continue.
Thank you. So, as Jill said, that we are funded by Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Immigration Canada since 2009, and we are a community collaborative initiative. Sorry?
Could you speak up a little bit or move the microphone a little closer? He's just having trouble hearing.
All right. How about that now? Can you hear me now?
A little louder still, please.
All right. LIMLIP is funded by Refugees, Immigration, Citizenship Canada, as Jill has said, since 2009. We have been, well, just give a recap of what the LIMLIP is doing now. So we are still on board. We were initially funded for 7 months, but it's now in the 7th year, which is good. And where are we today? This is our 3rd strategic plan that we are presenting to City Council for endorsement and to let you know what we are doing on the ground. And at the end of the day, we will also present something on the new strategic plan, which is 2016-2019, and our request for endorsement. As Jill mentioned, that the contract holder for the LIMLIP is the City of London, and it's called by the City of London since its inception. And we were also called by the United Way of London Middlesex, but since recently we have a new co-chair who is member from the community, Dr. Dave Sainani. And just to let you know that we are not the only LIP in Ontario, but we are one of 35 LIPs across Ontario. And not only this model has become very successful that now we have it in the East and in the West. So it's a national project throughout the country. We have close to 65 LIPs across the country. What do? Why are we here? We do not provide direct services. What we do is collaborate, coordinate, maximize the resources that's in the city to best serve the immigrants. So we do work closely with the settlement sector. We work closely with all the sectors, whether they're employment, social agencies, inclusion, the City of London, name it, we are working with them just to bring people together, because at the end of the day, our aim is to have a successful integration of the immigrants in all walks of life. These are just some of our members or our partners. And I have to mention that we are called the London and Middlesex because Middlesex is part of our local immigration partnership. So some local immigration partnerships, they have their city, just Windsor, for example, and Wellington, they'll have together. Here we have Middlesex is on board with us. So I cannot put all the partners because it will be crowded there. So I just mentioned a few of them. How do we work? What is our structure? We have 6 issue-specific sub-councils that deal with issues that are most important for the integration of immigrants. How have we decided on those issues is due to consultations with the community in 2010, and then again in 2013, and now 2016. So the community still tell us that these are the 6 issues that are of importance, and just to name them: employment, education, health and inclusion, civic engagement, justice and protection services, and settlement. So settlement is part of the puzzle of the integration. So the immigrant needs lots of things to settle properly. And then we have a central council which kind of oversees the work of the plan and the implementation plan and makes the direct connection with the authorities on top. So who makes up the central council? The central council is made up of the funders, the project team, which comprises of the co-chairs and the project staff, 2 of us. And it also comprises of the chair of each sub-council, so we have 6 chairs. And we have a researcher from Western University. We also have United Way, who have a seat. We have the Francophone Immigration Network as a seat. And then we also have 8 representatives from the community at large who are the immigrants, those who have the lived experience. So we have them there as on the table as decision makers. So at the Central Council, this is responsible. What is the role of the Central Council? We meet once a month for 9 months in the year. We do not meet in July and August and December, but we meet every month, the last Monday of the month. So what does the Central Council do? Responsible for strategic planning, evaluation, oversight, implementing of the strategic plan, advises funders and policymakers, works with system to address some issues. For example, we were working with the Ministry of Health regarding interpretation piece, how important it is to provide the professional interpretation at medical sites for people who do not speak English. So this is one of the systemic issues. And the sub-councils, each sub-councils will look into their own specific issue. So if it is settlement, they will look into their issue, what are the gaps there, and how can we address those gaps. And we do not do the services, but we kind of coordinate how the community will come together and address those issues. So they lead their implementation plan, they support the goals identified in the plan, and then I go back? How can I go back? So I leave there. So this is in short what the Central Council does and what each sub-council does. So from here, I'll give it to Dave Senani to further explain. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I think you can still see me, right? Okay, great. So the first phase of our evolution was really setting the groundwork, establishing the foundations, sort of assessing the landscape, trying to get to know the community, trying to get to know the other service providers and organizations, and in essence, trying to build a bit of a brand for the LIP as well, raise some awareness about what we can do, our linkages, our partners, and some of the work that is ongoing. So we focused on, initiatives like connecting with existing initiatives, and I'll show you some examples of some of those points in the subsequent slides. But really, we were connecting with what was going on in the city at the time. We're trying to mobilize the community to facilitate the integration of immigrants by addressing some of their key issues. We're trying to raise awareness of the services and accessibility issues, and trying to build some enhanced communication among the sectors. So as you know, as Huda mentioned, we're split up into 6 sub-councils, and a lot of the work has been to look at what are the areas of commonality between those sectors. How can we build that critical mass, and how can we make sure that any collaboration that we build or take on is really greater than the sum of those parts individually. So towards that end, we looked at the organizations out there. We built some strategic partnerships, and it was really sort of trying to get the LIP established in the community's mind, as well as an effort for us to try and understand what the community was like, what the dynamics were like, and how best to serve the newcomers coming to London, Ontario. So that was the first phase of our evolution. The next phase is a very strategic and intentional go-forward plan to accomplish some of our goals and objectives, to understand what the gaps are, to fill the gaps, and also to mobilize the community as part and parcel of this entire process. So get them to help us with their own specific community needs. Who best than the ethnocultural communities to know what their needs and issues are within their communities. So to try and mobilize that and build that critical mass for the LIP and with the LIP to take it forward as the next phase of our evolution. So the LIP has been successful by and large in a lot of its mandate, a lot of its efforts and initiatives, and has come to be recognized as a leader in the sector, not only within London, Ontario, but within the local immigration partnership network. And as you know, as Jill and Huda mentioned, it's a federal network of local immigration partnerships across the country. So many communities have their own immigration partnerships. And London has always enjoyed the reputation of being very forward-thinking, very accomplished, very innovative. And certainly in southwestern Ontario and beyond that region, the London LIP has been held up as an example of how these LIPs can function. We've also been recognized as a catalyst. We're in the position where we're able to assist other organizations and facilitate their goals, or to bring groups together to achieve their initiatives. We've been recognized as a contributor and also a promoter of both the issues that newcomer community and the host community face in terms of the settlement and integration within the city. So as an example, we presented to the Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration, the House of Commons. We've had that opportunity to talk about the dynamics and the characteristics of the London community and some of the work going on. We've worked on developing position papers surrounding or around the issues of professional interpretation and positive impact on clinical outcomes in medical settings. We've looked at initiatives around landlord-tenant acts and contracts, and also we've hosted information sessions more recently for the private sponsors of the Syrian newcomer community. In terms of our role as a catalyst, we've worked with a number of different organizations. We have a couple of examples here. The London Area Association for Volunteer Administration, LAVA. We've worked with them extensively to promote the recruitment of immigrant volunteers. As I mentioned, we've hosted panel discussions with landlords and tenants to look at the housing issues and those sort of landlord-tenant agreements. And also with LMIEC and Middlesex County, we've hosted a number of education sessions with employers to look at the resources available to them, how best to help them understand what the issues are around hiring newcomers, how best to leverage their particular brand of skills and expertise and risk tolerances and the cultural nuances from the countries from which they come, and how best to leverage that to ensure that the London community continues to grow and evolve and expand economically and from a social impact point of view. As a contributor, we've had impact with the Child and Youth Network, with the Strengthening Neighborhoods Strategy, the Networking for Inclusive Community, as I said, the LMIEC, and more recently, the City of London Syrian Task Force. The details of some of that are available, but I thought in a presentation like this, we would spare going through all the frontline work in those initiatives. Some of you may have seen some of our social media campaigns aimed at highlighting the newcomers to the community. So we've done a number of successful I Am London campaigns over the last 3 or 4 years. We've highlighted newcomers and their particular skills, whether it be in entrepreneurship or in professional services or in their particular profession. And that's really aimed at trying to paint the newcomers in a good light, to focus on their strengths and their abilities to contribute to London as a welcoming community. In addition, we've hosted a show called We Are London. The show's been on Rogers Cable for the last 3 years, and we focused again on the content areas or the sub-council areas in the London Middlesex Local Immigration Partnership. And it's always amazing to wander through the community and have people say, "Hey, I know about your show," or "I've seen the show," or to bring you comments about that. So we've enjoyed some good sort of small A advocacy kind of initiatives in terms of bringing attention to the positives as well as some of the opportunities for the newcomers in this community. Our work has really supported the work of the City of London in terms of its 4 areas of the city, 4 focus areas, and we've worked on initiatives that have strengthened our community. We've worked on economic sustainability for the newcomers in the city. We've helped other organizations understand the value of the economic contributions of newcomers to the city, and also the concepts of volunteerism and inclusion and civic engagement for some of our newcomers. We often tell our newcomers that the best way to find a home in the community is to get out there and volunteer, to get involved. So a lot of the work of the LIP directly supports those 4 focus areas of the city, and we're very proud to be part of that and happy that we've been able to achieve some modicum of success in those areas. I'm going to turn it back to Huda, who's going to take us through the next phase of our evolution. Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you once again. Before I start this session, I just would like to thank our supporters there who spent some of their evenings today, including Robert Collins. Thank you very much for coming today. So, as I said before, that we are now presenting the 3rd strategic plan, which will take us from 2016 to 2019. Our themes have changed a little bit from the previous plans. In the previous plans, we had 5 different themes, and we worked with those themes from 2010 to 2016. But now with the consultation of the community, we see that welcoming community is a very important theme. Communication, access to information, coordination and collaboration, support and services for immigrants continues to be very important. Reduction of systemic barriers. So these are the guiding themes that will lead our work for the next 3 years. And our ongoing commitment through our guiding themes, we will continue to create opportunities for engagement, education, and action to support a more welcoming and inclusive community. So this is what we are hoping for and we're looking for. And now, if I may ask Dave again to come for a request.
Okay, so no presentation would be complete without an ask, right? And so I'd like to thank you all for your consideration, and what we would like to ask you to consider is endorsing our strategic plan for 2016 to 2019, please.
Thank you, Councillor Usher. Was that to speak? Okay, and I do, I'll go to Councillor Usher, and there's another member who's ready to endorse. So Councillor Usher.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks very much for the presentation from all the folks who spoke about it. This is certainly a program that I feel good about, that I am quite prepared to endorse. I've always endorsed it. I've always boasted about it. However, I have to tell you that many a times I wish I knew more about it. And it's not just me. many a times I wish that the ordinary immigrant who I meet in one situation or another, I don't mean the immigrant that I meet on the street, I'm talking about the immigrants who are out there looking for an opportunity. And a lot of them come to me asking me how I could help them find a job or apply for a job or look at their resume and a lot of that kind of stuff. And sometimes I steer them towards you folks. And by the way, I just want to say that if you see my picture in here, it's not me, it's my brother. That's with his husband, by the way. Just want to say, a lot of people take us for each other at different times. Good to see you, Mohammed. So how can we, I don't know if improve is the right word, but I'll say capture more of the immigrants who are out there? Because I'm not convinced that they know about you. I'm not convinced, therefore, that they use the opportunity of learning, of everything else that you just talked about in your mandate. And so how can we get the word out more, and how can you be associated with them and them associated with you a little bit more?
Thank you, Councillor Usher. I couldn't have asked for a better question, to be honest. Part and parcel, or a core to our plan and our operations going forward is based on our organizational structure. So in our central council, we have members at large who are typically representing different ethnocultural communities. And so one of our thoughts and our action plans going forward is to charge those members at large to go back to their respective ethnocultural communities and be the champion for the LIP in their communities, and specifically to talk about what the opportunities are for the ethnocultural community to contribute to filling the gaps that may be perceived in settlement and integration, but also how the communities can actually help to further the mandate of the LIP and further their own goals through association with the LIP. So we're very cognizant of the fact that we do get a lot of those sorts of how do I get a job kind of requests. And while we're not necessarily an organization that offers services on its own in that regard, we can certainly facilitate that process by pointing them in the right direction. So we feel that the step of actually involving our own members at large as the LIPS champions in their own communities will go a long way towards bringing people on board and helping them engage more fully in the community and avail themselves, make themselves aware of what services and resources are available, and hopefully they'll more fully avail themselves of those opportunities. So that's one step we're trying to take right now. So I'm hoping that we can come back and report that, look what we managed to do.
Well, I certainly appreciate that. Everything takes effort, and sometimes it's a slow start, but 7 years is a long time, and I would think that would be a little bit more advanced. I'm not blaming you. I think you got a good strategic plan here through you, Madam Chair, that, like I said, I want to endorse. My other question, and I'm just going to ask these two, but you have a lot of names, members, in this book. If I count them, you probably have about 1,000 names or more. So those are all your membership, but I don't want an answer for that right now. What I'm trying to get at here is that, and the thing that pains me is the other side of this coin is how do we, your organization, reach the employers' minds, heart, and soul to know what you're doing and for them to help to, I'll say, create jobs for newcomers in the city, because I see and experience too many newcomers out in the community, always looking for a job. And I have very rarely find one who get a job at the level of their educational capacity. They always have to take something lower. Now, understand me, Madam Chair, that I'm not against them taking something lower to get the experience. The problem is that in most cases, they can't even get that experience. So I don't know if you can give me an answer for that, or you're looking towards that in the future, more so than you have in the past?
I can certainly start, and then I'm hoping to call on my colleagues to help bail me out a bit. One of the things we've done is to look at what's the opportunities for collaboration between our sub-councils. So certainly in the area of employment, we've looked at the area of skills development, credentialing, training, those sorts of things. And it seemed like a natural fit to involve two of our sub-councils, employment and education, to work on exactly those sorts of things. Now, we're pretty realistic that we're not necessarily going to solve the credentialing issue overnight, right? And I'm an engineer. I did my training here, but I understand what the requirements are in foreign countries, and I understand what that process is. So I know it's a long, long road, and the same thing for any profession, for that matter. I think we're certainly pounding away at the idea of reinforcing the value of different perspectives and skill sets that immigrants bring here. We seem to very often get caught in the Canadian experience issue. And I'll be honest, I don't have an answer for that right now. I agreed sometimes you need to get your foot in the door and start at a certain level and work your way up. It's certainly quite a sobering thought for, someone to come in and not be able to function in their particular chosen field. We've worked with organizations in London that I think Huda will tell you about to address exactly that problem. And maybe I'll turn it over to Huda, and then perhaps Jill or Sandra can chime in.
Can I continue, because I see Councillor Saleh has got a question or something? No? All right. So if I may add to what David said, let me reiterate that we are not service providers. So what we do, we make the connections, we facilitate the success of the persons. So with regard to employment, we have done a couple of initiatives with the existing initiatives, LMIC, the London Middlesex Employment Council. We have done a kind of a forum for employers, because we realize that this is a gap. Employers do not understand how to tap into talents among the immigrants. So we had that forum where we had the employers along with service providers who support the immigrants. And then there was a discussion, there was a kind of case scenarios. And from that, the employer told us 53 employers were at that meeting, and they said this was the best forum they have ever attended, because they didn't know how to connect, how to get the immigrants. We have done that, for example, for the immigrants, and out of that, we have heard 2 successful stories. People have been employed. 2 other sessions we have done with the Small Business Center, because we do realize that people, when they come here, some choose to have their own businesses, but they don't know how to do it. So we provided that, we facilitated that through the panel of experts and the small business, and we have done sessions with immigrants who are looking into opportunities of starting their own businesses. So these may be smaller steps, but we are doing it through the Employment Sub-Council. Currently, the Employment Sub-Council is studying the data. What is the data there about unemployment? How many people are really not employed? We don't have the hard data yet in London. So we are trying to research that and see what is lagging behind. And maybe, Robert, you can add to that if you want to. So we are researching what is not available, and from there, we'll do the next steps. So the Employment Sub-Council really has got dedicated members on the council out of service providers and also immigrant, and the city sits on that sub-council too, which actually makes it more, towards your goals, trying to get the economic achievement for the members. Sandra, do you want to add anything? Oh, thank you.
If you just push the mic.
No, I think that's great. Huda, I think the reality is we continue to work around the issue of employment for everyone in our community and try to support that as best as possible. Thanks.
Councillor Saleh.
Sorry. Okay, I got it. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just almost not a suggestion to our guests, but more suggestion to city administration. Now, I know we've established the diversity office here in our city. From my understanding, I think I learned through the news. Unfortunately, I wasn't advised through internal mechanisms, but I think I learned through the news that we do have a diversity officer now, and I think it would probably have been great moving forward if, I think especially when we're having conversations around this, because that was part of the important pieces that I wanted that person, not just specifically dealing with human resources items, but the greater context, and also considering that LDREC was here. Just wanted to, so moving forward, hopefully, it'd be great to have them in these kind of conversations, because I think then they can build those relationships and then work with our partners, and then they can help us and see what we could do as a city to support and make enhancements, because I think there's always definitely lots of room for growth, and we want to see a lot more people coming here, and we can hopefully move our grade from a C, or I don't know what it is now, closer to at least a B or an A in the future when it comes to attraction and retention.
The stage is there.
Through the chair, thank you very much for the opportunity just to provide some additional context. As council committee will remember, through the council approved budget, multi-year budget process, we identified a three-pronged approach to the mechanisms by which we would share information and would create opportunities within the city. So one prong of that is, I understand, the diversity officer, and I understand additional information will be coming forward to you. We are in the midst of hiring also an immigration specialist in our service area. And we are also working on our own diversity plans across the corporation. We'll endeavor to provide as much information back to council and committee as possible throughout this process.
And to the chair, thank you for that response. I think for us, for me at least, I recognize that there's going to be different areas that have to do different things, but that's kind of why I saw I don't want to talk about something else that's not on the floor, but that's why I saw the position needed to be outside HR, so they can kind of have that overreaching and kind of help facilitate all those conversations. So hopefully civic administration hears that piece, and if I need to, maybe I'll come back or ask someone to reconsider that because I didn't get support.
I think, Councillor Salih, that perhaps separate from this motion that's on the floor, bringing another motion at another point in time, that maybe request civic administration to consider continuing to support organizations such as LMLIP with shared resources that may be in order separate from this. I think I hear what you're saying, and I think our staff do as well. So go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. From a process piece, I'm not sure I can, because how I would probably approach that was having the diversity office position be its standalone or outside of HR, and that motion failed that myself and Councillor Helmer voted for, so I can't even begin to start that conversation until next year unless someone else brings that up for reconsideration.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you're looking for a response to that, Councillor, or just statement. Okay, Councillor Helmer.
Great. So I want to focus in on page 60 of our report and page 5 of your strategic plan, which is the Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada outcomes. But first, I have a question through the chair to presenters. Are these outcomes that are handed down by the Government of Canada, and they say these are the outcomes we're trying to achieve? Fit your own plans into it, trying to achieve these outcomes?
Yes, we are mandated to achieve those outcomes as per Immigration Refugees Canada.
Okay, so recognizing that you can't change them, I did have a few comments on them. So I wanted to identify, first of all, there are 4 here, and some of them are short-term, proximate kind of outcomes, and some of them are these intermediate kind of outcomes. So 2 of them are about newcomers and immigrants. So it says newcomers and immigrants are aware of or obtain, right? And I think it's very interesting language, that you could be aware of the service and not use it, I guess, and that's valuable. But if you wanted to use the service and you obtained it, those seem to be very different and have different kind of levels of importance. The second one that's about newcomers and immigrants is newcomers and immigrants are connected to the broader community and social network. Right? They're connected. And the third one and the fourth one are really about community partners and, I guess, Canadians writ large. I don't know if that's supposed to exclude newcomers and immigrants. I certainly wouldn't. But to say that society as a whole is providing a welcoming community. So, I just want to focus in on those because some of them are tough to measure and to quantify. And I'm not sure how you've aligned all the things in your strategic plan to feed into achieving these outcomes. They're certainly not binary in the sense you say, yes, people are aware, check. These are more continuous things that could be on a whole spectrum. And I wonder if you could speak about how you or the government, the federal government, is trying to quantify these things so you can measure your incremental progress towards improvement over time.
So one of the areas of focus for our LIP is really in that outcome measurement and the metric side of things. And when I was chair of the Ontario Petroleum Foundation, we had a focus on outcomes evaluation and metrics. And we used a construct called the Canadian Index of Wellbeing out of Waterloo. And so we're currently early stages in our analysis of outcomes, and we're looking at what the right model is going to be. I personally have a bias towards the CIW, having worked with it for so long, and I understand how it works. So I'm sort of in that camp, but we're looking at what other framework, what other metrics framework may work for us. So little too early to say. We understand that we don't have the luxury of very precise measurements and binary measures and those sorts of things. It's a soft skill kind of area. So our measures may be things like uptake for arts and culture, as an example, or percentage of time increased in leisure activities. Those sorts of very soft measures. So we're looking for the right framework that will allow us to measure these things in a more subjective rather than quantitative way. So as we get there, certainly we'd be happy to come and report back on our progress. But as I said, we're very early on in the process. We're still trying to assess what's the right model to use in terms of assessment.
Thank you. So I want to then turn to, let's see, it's page 50 in the strategic plan, and this is where you're talking about the community capacity and perceptions of LIMLIP, which is a tough acronym. Because these variables are really, they lend themselves to surveying as a way of identifying them, right? Are you aware of these services? Do you obtain them? These are essentially survey questions where people are going to self-report. And then specifically around the community partners, again, it's like, you have to survey them to find out this information. The first bullet point there says that the response rate was down. It doesn't really get into details about what the response rate was like, how many people are participating in the survey. It just says it's a little bit lower. And, I don't know how much weight to put into the results coming out of the survey without knowing much about sort of the extent of it and the response rate and so forth.
I don't have the N handy right now. I can certainly find that out and find out what our response rates are, but...
Because about 67 respondents.
Sorry?
67 respondents.
Okay, 67 respondents was what I understood based on that particular survey. But I don't have the number of how many went out right now, so I can't tell you whether that's a fractional percent or a major percent of the respondents.
In terms of those respondents, are those unique organizations, or you'd have multiple respondents for one organization?
They were unique respondents.
Unique organizations. Okay, that's great. So, in general, I certainly endorse the strategic plan. I think, on the outcome side, I think that's where, and a lot of the questions, that's where it's getting at is, what are exactly we're trying to achieve and so forth. I think you look at the activities that are planned in the strategic plan and how they're lined up with those outcomes. I think all of that makes perfect sense. And I think this is a good example of how you can trying to align all these different things, similar to the Child and Youth Network. We have trying to align all kinds of different organizations towards common objectives. So I'm happy to endorse it once it gets to council. I can't vote out here on committee.
Thank you, Councillor. So the endorsement has been moved and seconded by Councillor Armstrong and then seconded by Councillor Usher. So I think we can open that vote.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much. And for Councillor Usher, merci pour votre attention. C'était un plaisir de vous présenter notre plan stratégique. Et aussi, c'est disponible en français. It's available in French as well.
The councillor has a response en français aussi.
Bon, je ne peux pas parler français. Madam Chair, this is out of place, but I just want to thank the three gentlemen up there, my brother, my former co-worker and my good friend from London Cross-Cultural Learning Center. So that gentleman in the middle, he and I worked many years with Bell Canada. We came here to London together.
Thank you, Councillor. Committee, we've completed items 1 through 7 at this point, and that is a lie because we did not complete item 4. There was a request for some confidential information. What I'm going to suggest is that we have other confidential items, that we perhaps do that at the same time, and instead we move to item number 9, the councillor submission. I see some general consensus on that, so we have a letter with item number 9, and I'm quite certain that the councillor submitting the letter would like to speak to it. So I will give the floor to our colleague, Councillor Park.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, Madam Chair, for being so gracious. So the letter outlines asking for staff to review and report back with proposed amendments to the property standards bylaw with regard to properties that are identified under the inventory of heritage resources. So this is a long-standing issue. It shouldn't be any surprise that a councillor has brought this forward. In terms of the inventory, the property standards bylaw currently is silent on how do we protect these sorts of properties and why they're important. So looking forward to seeing a potential report back on this. It not only benefits, the city as a whole with regard to our heritage inventory, but also the property owners themselves. It benefits them to, protect their investments. So what I'm hoping to see back is some articulation about how do we protect in terms of making sure a vacant building has the heat on all winter and those sorts of things. So look forward to the discussion from my colleagues.
Thank you. I'm going to look to Mr. Kostovich first to see if you have any comments.
Through the chair, we'll take the recommendation and report back. I just want to assure you that the property standards bylaw applies to all properties. Currently, it does apply to listed properties as well as designated properties. It treats designated properties in a specific way as it relates primarily to modifying, altering those properties. But we could look at the property standards bylaw and see if there's even other means in addition to the bylaw that could afford itself to maintenance of these types of properties and report back.
Thank you. So it appears that staff are very receptive to bring a report back. A couple of our colleagues have indicated they're prepared to move and second a motion to receive a report back from staff. I'm looking to see if there's any speakers on this. Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be more than happy to move the motion, and thanks for my colleague for bringing this forward.
Seeing no other speakers, I too would like to I will first extend my thanks to our colleague Councillor Park for bringing this forward. It's very frustrating to hear the planning side of it when we have heritage issues and say, well, it's been neglected for so long. And I've always said, if we can't solve the problem along the way, how can we expect to solve it when it's too late? So I'm very interested to learn what we could implement to ensure that our heritage properties are protected all the way along. Councillor Helmer would like to say a few words as well, and I welcome you to do that.
Thank you, and I think at council I'm open to supporting the idea of having a report back. I'm not totally convinced that there's a middle ground between our standards for regular properties and our standards for designated heritage properties, that there's things that we're going to really require differently for the ones that are listed. I think part of the issue may be that we need to do a better job of designating and speed up how fast we're designating to get them appropriately. Some of these properties that are not designated and are listed, in the end, we've consented to demolitions and all kinds of things because it turns out they're actually not really important heritage resources. So I hear where my colleague is coming from, and I support the idea of a report back. Just looking at the bylaw myself, it's very specific about the heritage standards and the specific heritage attributes, and I'm not sure we'll have the information from the inventory to, like I said, essentially enforce it in an effective way. But I think it's a good idea, and maybe there's opportunities there, and I support the idea of getting a report on it.
Thank you. So that's been moved and seconded. We'll open the vote.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 4-0.
Okay, so we have a motion from somebody, I believe, to add an additional item to go in camera, and it's to receive solicitor-client advice as related to item 4 on the public agenda. That's moved by Armstrong. We're going to put it on screen, and there is a seconder for that as well. We can move that on screen and open the vote. And once we hear that vote passes, we'll be moving in camera for 3 items. Then we will be returning to public session for item number 7 and 8.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 4-0. And just for clarity, there are 3 reasons, 2 of which appeared on the added agenda, and the third, which is solicitor-client information related to item number 4 on the public agenda.
Mr. Spring, are we good to move ahead with the meeting? Okay, so we have finished the 3 matters for which we went into confidential session, 2 as posted on the public agenda and 1 that was added and read by the clerk. And on those matters, I'm going to report progress. At this time, committee, the deferred matters list, I did not have the opportunity to review this list this week, but I do see that it is quite a bit smaller. So that's good. And I skipped item number 7, which is the 8th report of the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So we need to put that one on the floor, and there's items for direction there, and so we're going to put a motion up to receive the reports. Any comments? Okay, open the vote.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 3-0.
Okay, can I get a motion to accept the deferred matters list? We'll put it up on screen unless there's any comments about it. We did do a big cleanup last meeting, so I think we're okay. And it appears that item number 4 it was dealt with previously?
No, she's talking about 4 on your agenda.
Sorry, 4 on my agenda is completed. Not completed. Okay, deferred matters list is fine to put up and move, and then we'll circle back to item 4.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 3-0.
And my apologies to my colleagues and staff. I clearly have a bit of a cold. I'm in a little bit foggy today. So item number 4 we have not dealt with because there was a motion to get some advice in camera. So we now need to put item number 4 on the floor. And I'm looking to staff to see if there's any comments on this item.
Through the chair, the report is as submitted. The Community Care Access Center requires us to have an electronic system in place in order for us to share information with respect to individuals who are looking to find residency at Dearness Home. This is a requirement for us. The report provides you an overview of why it needs to be in place. It also identifies risks, and it also identifies our requirement to do this. And it also includes a letter from the CEO of the CCAC asking us to move forward on it.
Okay, there's a question from Councillor Usher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Somebody asked me this question, and therefore I need to ask it. If somebody would like to go to LTC or one of these homes, what I'm reading in here is that they've got to apply through CCAC. And it's a reason, it's part of a reason for CCAC because they need to check up. What they were asking me is that if they have to, if CCAC is going to check up on their pension, whatever pension they're receiving, and any money that they're getting, and whether they have to give this all up and they can't have anything for their pockets. That's what they were asking me. I'm not so sure if the answer is in here, so I couldn't read that in here.
Through the chair, to the councillor's question, the CCAC manages the access, the wait list, basically, and then it identifies, when you go to the CCAC, you apply to live in a long-term care facility, you identify a number of options. Eligibility for long-term care is identified at that point in time. The reality of how much you pay is based on your individual situation. If you are eligible to pay if you're eligible for a subsidy, that would be determined at that point in time. If you're eligible to pay for a private bed, that might be determined at that point in time. The information that you share with CCAC as a resident, unattended a resident into a long-term care facility is for the purpose of determining eligibility across a number of places. It doesn't keep you from getting included on the list. It just is, as you make applications for other places to live, it is to determine your entire information and what your needs are in that application that you're making.
So when they apply to CCAC, do they state which home they want to go to? Or they just apply and CCAC says, well, we have space here and we have space here, which do you want? That's...
Through the chair, I will let Ms. Hines, the Administrator of Dearness, respond to the question that you have with respect to CCAC through the chair.
Through the chair, thank you. The CCAC is an intake, basically, and when you apply, they review you, they look at everything and see what your needs are. If you are eligible for long-term care, you have to provide 5 potential homes that you would accept.
Are there any other questions on this report? Okay, we'll open the vote.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 3-0.
Colleagues, I think in my foggy brain that we have now covered everything, and I need a motion for adjournment.
No.
I do not.
No,
I have a motion. See? Councillor Usher would like to make a motion.
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion. I'm going to do this with pleasure. Just kidding you. I move that the following action be taken with respect to the upcoming scheduled meetings of the CAPS. That the special meeting scheduled for October 13th, 2016 is scheduled for the purpose of a public participation related to the proposed vehicle for hire licensing bylaw be rescheduled to Wednesday, October 26th, 4 p.m., starting at 4 p.m. Notwithstanding Section 2.7 of the Council Procedure, the above noted rescheduled meeting be held at Centennial Hall or alternate locations other than City Hall chambers in order to accommodate the anticipated interest and attendance. That the public participation meeting previously scheduled for October 26th for matters of the door-to-door sales, payday loans, lenders, and contracts be rescheduled to a future date of the CAPS.
I'll move that.
Thank you. So it's up on screen for Councillor Usher and Armstrong. And the reason for the public's information was we were previously scheduled here on October 13th. We have received information that there's a large amount of interest in this meeting. And I would like to accommodate everybody in the most appropriate venue. It will be my intent for this meeting that we will start at 4 p.m. We will have regular breaks, but we will continue until we are completed. So please plan accordingly if you're attending that meeting, that it could be quite late into the night. So I am going to open the vote if there's no other comments. We will have dinner, we will have snacks, we will have coffee. Councillor Helmer.
So 2 things. One is, have we talked to or reached out to, you know, the very interested parties in the Taxi Association and others about this particular date and if it's conflicting with anything, and are they okay with the idea of changing it? That's the first question. The second is a comment about, you know, we have a London Transit Commission meeting, for example, that conflicts with this. It's not ideal. I may look around, maybe moving the commission meeting around or something, but I know we have to find dates that will work for people, and I realize that, but I don't really like the idea of rescheduling something we've given a lot of notice about to then move it around to a later date. So I'm particularly interested about making sure we get lots of participation from folks.
Through the chair, I did consult the industry. They would like the venue changed because they do believe there's going to be a significant turnout. So the venue is the one issue, the date is another. With respect to the date, their preference is to have it sooner than later. So as soon as, or as close to the 13th, which is the original scheduled date, would be ideal. But they recognize that there's a lot of people involved, particularly with the councillor schedules, and we're just, so whatever really works for you, we will gladly accept. But definitely something in October is what they were hoping, sooner than later.
Thank you. And so we did check to see if the facility would be available on the 13th, so we could proceed as normal. It is not. It's the first time that we were able to achieve quorum and have the facility available was October the 26th. And glad to hear that that works out with the Taxi Association as well, because I certainly want to accommodate participation at that meeting. And did I answer your other question, Councillor Helmer, or was there a second piece, or are we good? Okay, so we can open that vote.
Closing the vote, and that motion carries 3-0.
Okay, and a motion to adjourn by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Usher.
Yes, ma'am.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries.